Our first guest this morning is a member of European Parliament and a former Prime Minister of Poland, Professor Marek Belka. Professor, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us this morning. I wonder if we could start. I wonder, what's your take on the situation between Israel and Iran? And why do you think that Israel targeted the embassy in Damascus, the Iranian embassy in Damascus? Are they trying to provoke a strong reaction from Iran?
Well, let's first recall how these things happened. It happened with this dramatic events, attack of Hamas on Israel, killing of more than 1,000 people inside the country and taking few hundreds of hostages. So then the war against Gaza, against Hamas in Gaza unfolded. And we have to remember Hamas is a clone of Israel, of Iran. So what is happening now is the continuation of this. I don't really know what the actual objective of Iranian attack was, because as we know, it ended in a tactical disaster for Iran. But clearly this has a potential of serious destabilization of political situation, both in Middle East, but also beyond. So this is a very serious matter.
It looks like the attack thus far, it was purely symbolic, and I assume it was to save face internally. I mean, there are a lot of hardliners in Iran that were expecting some sort of response. So this was the sort of, I think mostly what happened on Saturday was a lot of money blew up in smoke over Israel on Saturday night. But I wonder if Israel decides to take another step. I mean, the U.S. saying, don't do anything. Iran itself saying, we're done. That was our response. We're done with this. What would happen if Israel chose to do a counterattack?
Well, you have mentioned that in Iran, there are hardliners who demand from the government, from the army to do something spectacular. But we know that there are hardliners in Israel also. And as a matter of fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu is considered by many as a hardliner. So we have a situation in which internal factors can determine the actions in external actions, that is, including violent reactions. So it's very, very dangerous, and from our point of view here in Poland, a deplorable situation.
And now, perhaps sticking to what you just mentioned and looking at this from the Polish perspective. So, Professor, how do you think that now Polish-Israeli relations will look like, also having in mind recent events and also now the incident with World Central Kitchen workers? How do you see that these relations now unravel?
Well, I don't want to go too deeply in this respect, in this matter. I think that there is there is no reason of worsening of the diplomatic and international relations between our two countries. As a matter of fact, the reaction of Poland as a country and of most of the Polish society to the attack on Hamas was very sympathetic for Israel. But of course, the continuation of action in Gaza, war, killing of tens of thousands of people, and now this deplorable incident with the international volunteers, including one of them being Polish. Well, this all creates a tension between our countries, and well, it takes a lot of diplomacy and delicate, let's say, behavior on both parts to keep the Polish-Israeli relations at a very high level, as it was the case before.
That's right. It looks certainly the Polish-Israeli relations seem very bleak right now. There is talk that perhaps they'd like to change at least the ambassador that's here in Warsaw, the Israeli ambassador. He wasn't. He's meant to be a diplomat, but he wasn't very diplomatic at all. But now let's turn to Polish matters. The big talk of the town right now, of course, is the fact that the rebate, the 5% VAT on food, will. I mean, they're going to take that away. So a 5% VAT will come back to foodstuffs here in Poland, and people are worried about food inflation. How much of an effect do you think this 5% might have?
Well, first, it is an unnatural situation in which we keep the zero VAT rate on foodstuffs. I mean, we had to return to the normal very low rate, mainly because of rather difficult situation of the Polish public finance, that is the legacy of the former government. I think that there will be some pickup of food prices, but less than 5%. Well, it all we'll know for sure in about 2 weeks, because we'll have the flash communication on inflation in April. As we see in the shops, small shops have let's say increased the prices by those 5%. But the big chains like Lidl or Biedronka are in cutthroat competition fight, so they are rather reluctant to rise to increase prices by the whole amount of VAT increase.
Right, and
I wouldn't panic. It's not going to be 5%. It's going to be less. We don't know how much less.
well, of course, it remains to be seen, but basing on what we know, on the flip side, the return of the 5% of VAT rate on food is expected also to contribute significantly to state budget revenue. So could you perhaps elaborate on these economic implications of this revenue boost?
Well, this is a question to the Minister of Finance, because they know exact data and they know the exact situation months by months in the central budget. As we know, they hint that the situation is not as bad as they expected, although it's quite serious. So this is all we can say.
All right. And while all this is happening, people are worried about inflation, of course, at the shopping market, at the supermarket. Also, wages have been rising, apparently faster than inflation. Wage inflation is becoming an issue in Poland. I mean, it's good. It's a good thing for people who are employed. But what does that mean for the economy?
Well, this means that inflation is going to be longer. I mean, more difficult to fight. As we look at the numbers, the CPI inflation, the so-called headline inflation, is very low, at least at the end of March, 1.9%, which is fantastic news. But we know that the VAT on foodstuffs plus potential lifting of so-called anti-inflationary measures on energy, they will lift inflation higher. And what we see is that the so-called base inflation, meaning inflation minus foodstuffs and energy, is much higher than the headline inflation, much higher than the inflation target. So we are still fighting inflation, and as far as the wage inflation is concerned, this translates into higher rate of price increases in services. And this is not only the Polish problem, it's a more universal problem in Europe and also in America. Prices of services grow faster than other prices, probably making up for some price restraint that happened before. And also, this is the consequence of higher wage increases. But this is also the consequence of a situation on the labor market. We have very low unemployment levels all over the world, basically. Not just in Poland, not just in Europe, not just in the US. So this is a recipe for higher wage inflation and higher inflation of services.
Of course, we do see that it's a universal issue that the world is battling. Now, looking at this as well from the Polish perspective now, the change in the VAT rate could particularly affect individuals with lower incomes, as food constitutes a significant portion of their expenses. So how do you think can policymakers address potential challenges faced by vulnerable populations due to this shift?
Well, high inflation is, was seen by some as a positive factor for economic activity. This is not true. We have seen that high inflation in the last 2 years decreased the purchasing power of the people and had some negative impact on consumption, which is, by the way, 80% of GDP. So consumption basically decides what happens with the economic activity. Let's stay with consumption. So higher wage growth that you have mentioned that we are observing is possibly compensating for this, let's say, pressure on purchasing power. Well, there is nothing easy, nothing simple in fighting inflation. It's very simple and very easy to leave the gene out of the bottle, and then to persuade it to come back to the bottle. It's very, very difficult and takes some time. So we are now in this process of persuading the gene of inflation to squeeze back into the bottle.
All right. And if I could, just a final question. I wonder how would you compare Poland's situation to the Eurozone? And do you yourself, as an MP in the European Parliament, do you support Poland's entry into the Eurozone?
Well, if this is one question, then I congratulate you. I mean, this is an invitation for a long lecture. Polish economy last year was not as impressive as it used to be let's say, comparing with the rest of the European Union or with the rest of the European economy. But we have now forecast that says that Polish economy will rebound and sort of take a leading position in the EU, or broadly speaking, in the European economy. But of course, inflation is probably a bigger problem in Poland than in Eurozone as a whole. But well, if we look at the numbers, I mean, this ceased to be a dramatic problem anymore. As to the euro, believe me, we are not qualifying to the euro at the moment. Besides the popular approach to euro is quite negative. It's the program of it's a product of long-lasting negative propaganda, and we lack a meaningful, competent discussion among economists and among politicians about the pros and cons of euro adoption. I am personally inclined to say Poland is well prepared to the euro, should join the euro, but first let's meet the criteria. Thank you.
All right, Professor Belka, it was a great privilege speaking with you. Thanks so much for taking the time this morning. Hope to speak to you again soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.